Welcome to the first iteration of the official OpenRA patch Spotlight. This will be one of the most comprehensive updates to a project in recent history, adding countless requested features and refining the balance of competitive multiplayer along the way. As such, it warrants equally as comprehensive a video to examine all the upcoming changes in great detail. If you are interested in a particular topic, here are the timestamps to navigate this video. My name is 5aces, and here is a glimpse into the future of OpenRA. For those of you who are new to this project, welcome back, Commanders! OpenRA is a real-time strategy engine that attempts to bring the classic 2D titles of the now defunct Westwood Studios into the 21st century by giving them a complete gameplay overhaul and improving the interface to meet the standards of today. It is and will always remain 100% free to download and play, has no monetization, and is constantly improved upon by restless developers. It comes packaged with modernized recreations of the classic games Command & Conquer Red Alert, Command & Conquer Tiberian Dawn, and Dune 2000, as well as full mod support. Tiberian Sun, the beloved third iteration to the Command & Conquer franchise, is under active development, and while there's still a lot to do, this patch specifically adds many vital features that pave the way for the return of Kane. OpenRA has almost become synonymous with Red Alert, but at its very core, it is still an engine providing the cogs and wheels that make the games tick. As such, universal engine updates will affect every mod, including the default games. Some of them add fundamental features that have been requested since the inception of OpenRA. The ability to save your campaign progress was an instrumental tool in avoiding frustration while playing single-player campaigns in any RTS game since the dawn of time. Nothing is quite as rage-inducing as losing a critical unit due to a slip of attention 30 minutes into a scenario and being rewarded with an instant mission failed screen. Needless to say, this basic feature was high on the priority list for OpenRA, but no matter how close the developers got to solving this puzzle, the solution seemed always just quite out of reach. Until a milestone was reached in July of 2019. The fall patch of 2019 finally introduces the long-coveted option to save mission progress in all single-player modes. No more Tanya's being devoured by hungry dogs seconds before the mission ends. Defying her fate is now just 2 mouse clicks away. The competitive scene of OpenRA has a long and storied history, full of champions, upset victories and clutch defeats, vibrant tournaments, streams and spectacles. This makes it all the more a special moment to announce that our new and updated spectator UI finally meets competitive standards. Gone are the days of old when status bars would obstruct almost 25% of the screen. Now we have a slick transparent bar graph in the top left that conveys all vital information at one glance. The interface offers 7 different metrics that can be cycled through with a drop-down menu. Alternatively, the settings also offer customizable hotkeys for each different statistics tab. In addition, spectators can now see the precise commands that a player issues to any of their given units by selecting them and holding down the Shift key. This makes reading the battlefield and understanding strategies all the more convenient and exciting. Support powers have played a vital role in Westwood games since the early days of Command & Conquer, when an A-10 airstrike could be called upon to severely cripple an enemy's defenses. The limited logic of the original games, however, did not allow one to select a vector for their planes, leaving the player at the mercy of random number generation. Sometimes planes would strafe the target almost instantly, other times they would seemingly take the scenic route. While having adopted this logic in previous iterations, the latest patch will introduce the option to select an angle for all types of support powers. To do so, one simply has to select the support power, then click and hold the left mouse button and drag the mouse in the desired direction. This will still be limited to 8 directions, but the ensuing precision barrages are going to make sure everyone knows to respect the edges of the map. The Shift key plays a vital role in OpenRA gameplay. It is an active modifier that allows players to string together orders that will be swiftly executed by the selected units upon releasing the key. Previous versions had restrictions on what types of orders could be queued up, but this will be lifted in the upcoming release. This allows for creative gameplay automation of all sorts. Order a vehicle to dispose of an enemy, then return back to base for repairs. Load a troop transport with flamethrowers, tell them to deploy in the enemy base and wreak havoc, then get back in and make a run for it. Send an engineer in a scout vehicle to capture an enemy structure, then have him duck back into the safety of his getaway car. Run circles around unsuspecting opposition. Order your harvesters to grab the closest resources to maximize profits. A vast array of possibilities is opened up with the redesign of shift key usage in OpenRA. The Alt key is another key component to advanced commands in OpenRA. Holding it down while giving an order turns any order into a force move command that compels units to move to the designated spot no matter the cost. This is useful for a plethora of things, from forcing tanks to crush infantry to teleporting multiple chrono tanks at once. This version of OpenRA has added more functionality to the force move command. It can now also be issued to deployed construction yards, forcing them to pack up and move on. This can be used in conjunction with a shift Q deploy command, making it more convenient than ever to expand one's base of operations. However, nothing comes without attached opportunity cost, and so a small sacrifice had to be made in the wake of this change. While it was previously possible to use the Alt modifier for loading armies into multiple transports with just one mouse click, this feature has been removed. Seeing as force move is a prerequisite for some vital features to Tiberian Sun, we consider this a good trade-off regardless. Loading up multiple transports can now be achieved by using the previously mentioned shift modifier on said transports instead. As is often the case in real-time strategy, time-sensitive selection of correct units can decide the outcome of a battle. Previous releases tried to account for that by introducing lowered selection priority for non-combat units, thus severely reducing the chances of accidentally including harvesters or engineers into a combat group. As it turned out, however, this made it cumbersome to respond to enemies attacking the economic lifelines by ordering harvesters to seek shelter in the heart of the base. More than often, a single combat unit got in the way and made it harder than necessary to select your tireless lorry drivers. This issue is going to be addressed in the upcoming patch by including two different selection modifiers. Holding down the control key while selecting an army has an inclusive effect and highlights both combat and non-combat units. Conversely, holding down the Alt key singles out dedicated non-frontline units such as engineers, MCVs and harvesters. The old Tiberian Dawn user interface left a lot to be desired. Functional but barebone, it lacked any semblance of polish and relied upon conveying vital game information in an immersion-breaking brute force style. We are glad to report that the sidebar has been given a complete overhaul, giving it more graphic fidelity and dignity. The minimap is now larger for better readability. The power meter and money indicator have been integrated into the EVA overlay that wraps around the top side of the screen. While this change is more of a stylistic than transformative nature, it does away with the terrible UI design of the old days. Previously, users of operating systems other than Windows were dependent on having Mono installed to get this game running. With the release of standalone versions for both Mac OS and Linux, this is finally a thing of the past. While the engine has received some serious updates, another set of changes has been aimed at improving the gameplay experience without necessarily skewing the fine line of balance in one way or another. These mostly comprise quality of life improvements for unit behavior. Let's take a closer look under the hood of OpenRA. Some might say that questionable pathfinding has always been a core feature of the Command & Conquer series, and improving on it would be a step further away from the spirit of the originals, but we firmly disagree. To prove our point, the pathfinding algorithm of OpenRA has received a significant tweak. Harvesters, once notorious for spontaneously forming union strikes to demand better labor conditions, will now be smarter about scanning for resources and no longer get into disagreements over whose turn it is to harvest the last tile of ore. This should prevent them from stalling and losing the player precious money in the process. Mine layers have developed advanced trigonometry skills and will now try to use the least amount of moves when deploying a minefield instead of using the tried and tested Roomba method. Finally, units will no longer get into a traffic jam when entering and exiting service depots. Work smarter, not harder. Aircraft have traditionally been a difficult class of units to wield in OpenRA. Their propensity to politely wait their turn at airfields or helipads made the rearming process a tedium and created legendary queues rivaled only by the London Underground. We have reworked the docking logic from scratch to guarantee smooth rearming in the future. Air traffic controllers, rejoice! Helicopter behavior has been overhauled to give them the opportunity to land on command by giving them a move order with the Alt key modifier. This presents not only an extra layer of functionality, but also some interesting gameplay possibilities. Landing your helicopters amidst enemy infantry will crush them, but in doing so expose your air fleet to direct fire. This creates a completely new risk-reward strategy for engaging the enemy while the ammo bays are empty. It also allows them to pick up crates, as well as dodge anti-air missiles with good timing. This also comes in handy for damaged helicopters. Mechanics can now administer field repairs at any given time. Additionally, the Chinook has been granted a set of quality of life improvements. Instead of always landing at its destination, it now continues to stay airborne until either an alt move or a deploy command are issued. No longer is the trusty Chubbycopter going to expose itself to ground forces as soon as it has reached the designated target area. This provides it with both more safety for eco-line raids and a new layer of utility as a cheap, reliable scouting unit. The time-honored tradition of Westwood Studios demands that buildings appear as a blueprint before being placed in the game. OpenRA tried emulating this, but previous versions added too much unnecessary visual noise to the building preview. The latest patch brings us much closer to the originals and adds some much needed visual clarity. No more accidentally building a defensive nuke silo instead of a base defense. OpenRA may come bundled with a host of different mods, 3 to be precise, but at the end of the day, Red Alert is still the shining star of the show, with the player base eclipsing that of the other two games combined. With such a dedicated competitive community, it does not come as a big surprise that most of the balancing efforts take place on the desolate wastelands of World War II Chrono Shift Edition. Time to put on our spotting scopes and take a closer look. The most comprehensive set of balance changes pertains to stealth mechanics. In previous iterations, this was a host of complicated gameplay mechanics with different types of stealth that all had their own separate rules for detection. This has been streamlined for clarity purposes. First off, all infantry units in the game were issued thermal detection kits, or glasses depending on whom you ask, and can now detect all stealth units in direct proximity. This detection corridor is only 1 cell wide, so sneaky infiltrations will still be possible given the player pays attention to where they are moving their units. Automated detection was removed from the radar dome because it made the enemy base a no-go zone for infiltrating units for practically no opportunity cost. In the same spirit, Mammoth tanks, who were already overperforming, had their stealth detection cut. Additionally, all base defenses now detect at a streamlined value of 6 cells. It has to be noted, however, that mines and submarines still use different types of invisibility and are thus not affected by the rework. We believe this implementation of consistent rules will result in less confusion around the concept of camouflaged units. Parabombs, also known as Ukrainian airmail, have always been a staple of highlight reels. With no player agency over what angle they would come in from, both the attacker and the defender were at the mercy of random number generation. With that no longer being the case, they had to be slightly changed in order to account for their instant travel time, especially around the edges of the map. We decided to increase both the speed and the altitude of the Badger bombers, giving the opposing player more time to react to pinpoint accuracy parabombs while cutting down on the travel time. There will still be games decided by this powerful bunker buster, but this should level the playing field by adding a level of counterplay to the Ukrainian postal services. From casual 10 vs 10 team games all the way up to the highest competitive tier, the Mammoth tank has been overperforming in almost every level of play. Dubbed the tankiest artillery unit in the game, the massive 8 cells of range on its iconic Tusk missile launcher, combined with its high health pool and solid anti-armor firepower, gave it an easy safety net that made it an extremely safe unit choice in almost all situations. This will be mitigated in the upcoming versions by toning down Tusk missile range to 6 cells, requiring players to take an immediate risk when diving for kills on enemy infantry. This also affects its anti-aircraft range, lowering the dead zone for helicopters and making it easier to flank. Additionally, as part of the stealth rework, we are removing the Mammoth's detection kit entirely to prevent it from being the tank equivalent of a Swiss army knife. The Ranger has always been a core unit of Allied early game. Its unparalleled mobility and harassing power have led to the emergence of the so-called Ranger Danger build, where players would build up to 7 of these light attack vehicles before building heavier units. A Soviet player should in theory have been able to counter this with mobile FLAKs, whose beefier chassis and higher range would allow it to deter Rangers from approaching. In the wake of this new trend, however, it turned out that the damage output against lightly armored vehicles such as the FLAK was just a bit too high, allowing Allied players to bully Soviets with overwhelming numbers of cheap scout vehicles. We are putting a halt to this by tuning down the M60 gun's damage output against light armor. This makes it significantly easier for Soviets to survive the early game by warding off Rangers, thus leveling the playing field once more.
There is a very unstable situation on the ground that is unfolding very quickly.
Mobile FLAKs have always been the bane of Allied Air Force builds. One bad move and your air fleet would find itself in a compromised position and relentlessly hunted down by a FLAK pack. With the added ease of use introduced by the opportunity fire changes of the previous patch, this strategy became just a little too reliable. As a result, we are putting the handbrakes on and decreasing the top speed of the mobile FLAK from 128 units to 118 units. This should give helicopters more of a chance at escaping. Conversely, FLAKs now have a slightly harder time disengaging after getting caught, but their high turn rate still makes them a safe choice against anything but the fastest units on the Allied roster. As a direct result of the aforementioned mobile FLAK speed reduction, its natural predator has to follow suit. We are decreasing the top speed of the light tank from 128 to 118 in order to prevent it from chasing its prey to the end of the map with no chance for escape. While the direct speed stat on those two units is identical on paper, the mobile FLAK still enjoys higher mobility thanks to its near-instant turn rate, making it highly survivable in the hands of seasoned commanders. The light tank, on the other hand, takes some time to rotate its chassis and align its turret, giving the Soviet player a much-needed head start. This should help maintain balance between all early game vehicle choices. The APC has been in an interesting spot. On the one hand, its bulky chassis and heavy armor made it great for bullying enemy infantry units around in the early game. On the other hand, using it for its intended role, that is, dropping infantry behind enemy lines, always came with an inherent high risk. Especially against Soviets, one well-placed Tesla coil was able to melt an entire APC and its passengers to slags in just a single flash of light. We are addressing this by increasing the APC's health pool from 30,000 to 35,000, just enough to give it the durability to withstand one direct Tesla coil hit. This should give the passengers enough time to exfiltrate safely before lightning strikes twice. It is also slightly going to bolster the APC's capability to soak damage from early light tanks, making it a decent unit choice in the face of a tank rush. We had reports coming in about Tesla coils exhibiting mysterious behavior. Sometimes they would zap enemy units and structures that the owner of the Tesla coil had no vision of. After lots of tinkering, we finally found the cause. With its weapon range being slightly higher than the line of sight it provided, The coils were able to detect enemies that were just barely out of line of sight for the player. We are fixing this peculiar bug by decreasing the range of the Tesla coils from 8.5 to 8 cells. No more ghost lightning in this patch. Several patches ago, most units produced from tech centers were deemed too weak. Too slow was their build-up, too late felt their impact on the game to turn the tide of battle. This led to a buff in tech unit production times across the board, allowing players to deploy advanced warfare units more rapidly. Subsequent patches have, however, seen improvements and reworks to all major Tier 3 units, firmly establishing them as a viable build option. With all these patches incorporated, we finally feel safe enough to revert the decreased build times for anything tech related to mitigate their snowball effect on games. This affects the Cruiser, Missile Sub, Mammoth Tank, MCV, Mobile Radar Jammer, Mobile Gap Generator, Tesla Tank, Chrono Tank, Phase Transport, MiG and Longbow. Most of the changes in Red Alert were geared towards evening out the playing field between Allies and Soviets in terms of gameplay. There was, however, one particular change that was made not to amend balancing issues, but to address a massive gap in the space-time rift that threatened to divide the player base over its very existence. Since OpenRA's day of inception, the Allied faction was gifted the iconic Soviet Hind helicopter gunship to address the gap in their air fleet. To many fans of Cold War hardware, this was an affront. But there was no easy fix to this dilemma that wouldn't completely break the balance of the game. We are proud to report that this patch finally does away with that point of contention by removing the Hind from the Allies' arsenal and replacing it with the lore-friendly BLACKHAWK. Available to all Allied sub-factions, the BLACKHAWK is functionally identical to its misaligned predecessor. It retains the Hind's fearsome infantry deterring chain gun and all its cost, tech level and internal workings, while adding a fresh coat of paint. And what about the Hind? For now, the Soviet helicopter fleet will be safely stored away in an unmarked hangar somewhere between Voronezh and Vladivostok, but future patches might see a resurgence of the Soviet gunship. Time alone will tell. This concludes our patch spotlight for the fall 2019 release of OpenRA. More work has been happening behind the scenes in preparation for the next big update. Additionally, the stage has been set for a plethora of competitive events such as Red Alert Global League Season 8. If you want to learn more, please join the official OpenRA Discord server. Alternatively, if you feel compelled to test your mettle against the top players or want to learn from the best, join the OpenRA Academy server, a Discord group set up specifically to teach newcomers the ins and outs of competitive play. My name has been 5aces, thank you for tuning in, Commanders, and see you on the battlefield.